Today's topic, the quantum vacuum Interstellar Ramjet. Thanks for stopping by. I'm Todd, your host. A planet is the cradle of reason, but one must not live in the cradle forever. Konstantin Eduardovich Tsiolkovsky. It's simple. We cannot stay on Earth. What if I told you we have an obligation to grow and evolve, to leave the cradle? Therefore, we'll definitely need something better than rockets. Without more qualified individuals, we had to start this ourselves, as unqualified as we may or may not be. But our ideas will need polishing, and that's where you come in. Together, we can figure this out and finally achieve our goal, establishing humanity amongst the stars this century. After that, who knows? We call this the EOS Project. For a time, we strived for the moon. Never far was our eyes from the stars. Eventually, our vehicles grew in complexity. They grew in power and ability. Further did they travel until such time as when we arrived, having now touched the moon. That was the moment when all our striving reached new heights. But on the way, not only did we learn how to reach some of the planets, we learned new limitations of our grand machines. Whilst our vehicles were strong and powerful, so we thought, it wasn't enough. Not even close. So scientists, pen in hand, chalk on boards, conceived of an entirely new engine, nuclear they were. Though some 10 times more powerful, some 10 times more capable, not even this was enough to reach the stars. That is, with mankind on board. And yet, mankind was not content to sit on the sidelines so that his or her machines could explore the cosmos without them. No, mankind needs to be there, to see the grandeur for him herself, to explore the glory, the great beauty of the distant glowing cosmic gases, dusts, and resultant stars. Drones will simply not do, she proclaims. And with that, a new chapter began, because human necessity is the mother of invention. You see, this fundamentally summarizes the last 55 years of rocket development, even until today. By now, I think most of you are already aware of what the tyranny of the rocket equation means. Basically, this refers to a mass distance problem, which is a major problem. You see, a rocket or spacecraft can only carry a limited amount of fuel and propellant before the mass of both become too great for that vessel to carry. It's a diminishing return problem. Whilst chemical engines, chemical reactions, are indeed energetic, they are not at all efficient. Rockets burn through both rapidly relative to the distance they are able to effectively travel. Likewise, with the amount of mass they are able to lift or otherwise carry, hence, boosters are still required for higher altitude. However, the quantum ramjet solves the infamous mass distance problem, that is, the tyranny of the rocket equation, because, operating on the quantum level, the quantum ramjet draws all of its needed energies and more from the unlimited energy of the quantum vacuum field. That is to say, it draws its energy directly from the quantum fluctuations that are found everywhere throughout this so-called vacuum of space and time. Therefore, the quantum ramjet does not require any propellant to function, As a consequence, the starship's total mass is therefore less. In conjunction with this, it does not require fuel to convert to energy, further lessening the starship's mass. Lastly, it has an exhaust velocity of the speed of light, which means it's capable of pushing the starship up to the speed of light. But one should not confuse the quantum ramjet with the buzzard ramjet. Only in name are they similar. In a moment, we'll get to the finer details of the quantum ramjet, construction and evidence. But first, how we got to this point is both interesting and eye-opening. Because of the low efficiency of chemical reactions, and thus the insurmountable limitation of chemical engines, this led Robert W. Buzzard to conceive of the Buzzard Interstellar Ramjet. Buzzard concluded that the only way to travel through interstellar space was by means of extracting, or rather scooping energy in the form of hydrogen gas, to then be fused and thrusted at great velocities. Fused because fusion engines are much more energetic. They are many more times efficient than chemical rocket engines. Unfortunately, it was later found that the drag resistance produced by the ram scoop interacting with hydrogen gas was just too great for the engine to become practical, and there were other issues as well. But in 1967, another aerospace engineer, David H. Froning Jr., was simultaneously working on his own version of an interstellar buzzard-like ramjet. So upon learning of the ramscoop drag problem, Froning was both shocked and dismayed. Around the same time, a rather popular and successful theoretical physicist, John Wheeler, in addition to his well-known work on general relativity, nuclear fission, and many other works, he was also in the process of pioneering work on the quantum vacuum. Wheeler showed that space is not empty. Oh no, far from it. In fact, it is filled with innumerable energies and forces. Gravitons, photons, i.e. electromagnetism, both the weak and strong nuclear forces, as well as spherical particles similar to those that matter is normally made of, called virtual particles, in the form of electrons and positrons, mesons, and more, including dark matter and dark energy. Basically, Wheeler's work inspired Froning by providing him with a comprehensive understanding of the vacuum, the so-called emptiness of space. Froning realized, instead of scooping hydrogen gas and then fusing and thrusting the high-energy particles, he thought, for propulsion, why not tap, or rather extract energy directly from the vacuum itself? So within a relatively short period of time, the quantum vacuum ramjet was born. And in 1980 and 81, Froning published 2 papers: Investigations of Quantum Ramjet for Interstellar Flight and Propulsion Requirements for a Quantum Interstellar Ramjet. But Froning was not the first to propose the idea. In 1969, 11 years prior to Froning's papers, a Japanese scientist, Shinichi Seike, published his own paper, Quantum Electric Space Vehicle, in which he was the first to propose the use of the quantum vacuum for propulsion. By 1983, Charles Sheffield, within the pages of his well-known novel, The McAndrew Chronicles, was the first person to make use of this concept in science fiction, whereby his characters discuss the theoretical basis of the quantum drive, or as he named it, the vacuum energy drive. In 1984, Arthur C. Clarke, scientist and author, in his famous book, The Songs of Distant Earth, referred to and acknowledged the importance of the quantum ramjet, having referenced both Froning's papers, stating that Froning was the first to scientifically suggest making use of the quantum vacuum for propulsion. Today, Froning's work stands on firm ground, especially with modern modifications. We know this all sounds well enough, but what about the evidence? Physical, theoretical? Is there any? Well, there is, and it's a lot. In the mid to late 1960s, John Wheeler showed that space is filled with innumerable energies of all sorts. Even as far back as the early 1920s, Albert Einstein described light as quanta in his theory of the photoelectric effect, for which he won the 1921 Nobel Prize. Scientists were and are already well aware of the quantum vacuum and have been so for the better part of a century. We have known that any vacuum is not actually a vacuum. It is not empty space as once thought. Even when all matter has been vacuumed, removed from a test chamber, a field of energy remains which is humming with energies just above absolute zero. This energy field, known as the quantum vacuum field or simply the quantum vacuum, forms a background against which we measure all other energies. As a result, in comparison, when measuring all other energies, this field only appears, a calibration point, to have an energy of zero. The fact is, it's far from zero. We don't see this field because it mostly occurs over extremely small, extremely brief scales of space and time. So small, in fact, that we can barely perceive or interact with them. That is, under normal conditions. But if we look very close, we can see that empty space is vibrating, oscillating with terrible energies which are violently erupting and then annihilating themselves. One example of these energies is the Lamb shift. Another is the Casimir effect. As the scientist and author Robert L. Forward stated in his famed book, Indistinguishable from Magic, the theory of electrodynamics is the theory of describing the microscopic behavior of electricity and magnetism. It is one of the more successful physical theories since it has been checked experimentally many times and found to be accurate. But now, I'm going to throw a curveball at you. Well, kind of. A new theoretical narrative has emerged, one that replaces the long-standing quantum vacuum field nomenclature with a new nomenclature, quantum foam. Why the change? Quantum foam better describes what is taking place on the atomic scale. You can think of quantum foam, the innumerable fluctuations like this. Everywhere throughout space and time, at any one moment, taking place on timescales shorter than our clocks are able to detect on the atomic scales, there are an infinite number of interactions of quanta of energy, which are mixing and assembling and annihilating so many times that the quantum vacuum, if you could see on the quantum level, would appear to be nothing more than a background of pure white noise, or in this situation, quantum foam. This is the bizarre realm where light and matter behave oddly. Matter can teleport. It can even exist in two places at once. Electrons can even behave both as particles and waves. And in this realm is where quantum entanglement takes place. It makes one think, how can seemingly so-called matter behave both as a wave and a particle? The answer is relatively simple, but in order to see the answer, to understand it, one must accept what one has been unwilling to accept. This is your clue. So, as you can see, this energy field, the quantum foam, has long since been observed and proven to exist. Two well-known physicists, Willis Lamb and Robert Rutherford, have already since tested and confirmed as such. Furthermore, it is well known that the electric fields of the quantum fluctuations cause perturbations to the orbit of the electrons around atomic nuclei. This is the root cause for why no one has been able to chill any material to absolute zero. And it doesn't simply stop here. Oh no, there's a lot more information. You see, modern computer scientists routinely manipulate this field in order to guide electrons along tiny wires within our computers for proper function. These are called quantum waveguides. How about that? Very sensitive electromagnetic and electromechanical systems must take the quantum foam into account because the needed electromagnetic fields within these devices will be dampened by the so-called emptiness of space, i.e., the quantum vacuum fluctuations. In technical terms, the quantum vacuum, the quantum foam, is both dielectric and diamagnetic. Furthermore, GPS systems and communication satellites must also make use of the quantum nature of photons and electrons in order to maintain proper and secure connections. Here's one you're familiar with, quantum entanglement, which is a form of instantaneous communication between two separate particles, even at very great distances, and this too has been reproduced in labs. This is yet another example of the quantum nature of the cosmos. And there are many more devices and machines that one would have never thought made use of the quantum nature of reality. In a sense, using the quantum energy is the natural continuation of the quantum mechanical devices and machines we all make use of daily. This is, on one hand, astounding, and yet, on the other hand, not. Even nature itself makes use of the quantum reality. Every day, every one of you walks through the quantum mechanical reality of nature without even being aware of it. So again, we must emphasize knowledge of the quantum vacuum fluctuations is already well known and even manipulated within computers, modern computers, GPS systems, communication satellites, and by Mother Nature, etc. As the saying goes, knowledge and use of this field has been hiding in plain sight. These tiny fluctuations do indeed affect objects on much larger scales. For example, a recent article by the on-campus MIT News entitled "Quantum Fluctuations Can Jiggle Objects on Human Scale." In this article, they reported that tiny quantum effects are able to move, literally move, 40 kilogram mirrors. So much, in fact, they are able to detect this movement. We're talking about extremely brief, extremely tiny quantum fluctuations, very literally moving large-scale objects. That is amazing. If the mass of this information doesn't mean anything, what will? The point being, as you can see, there is far more evidence for these quantum fluctuations, quantum foam, even interacting with large objects than can be simply ignored. And yet, this is not so much the tip of the iceberg. What's next is even more spectacular and revealing. In fact, it's a breakthrough in science, which, if employed correctly for all, would revolutionize the world overnight. I'll explain. Thanks to a dedicated team of professionals at the University of Colorado at Boulder, in 2023, Professor Garrett Moddel and his team designed and built a test device measuring only a few hundred nanometers, which was able to produce a considerable amount of energy directly from the zero-point field, or better stated, the quantum fluctuations of the so-called vacuum. In the last 2 years, his team has built thousands of successful test devices. In fact, a single unit is able to produce 70 watts per square meter, whilst a quad array unit is able to produce 280 watts per square meter. This is a big deal because it's a major breakthrough in energy production. With a few basic calculations, it is not hard to see that a stacked array would be able to power a great deal of many devices, machines, vehicles, homes, factories, spacecraft, starships, etc. But note, this is not a free energy device, no more than a solar cell is a free energy device. Why? You cannot extract something from nothing. However, as we have shown, the vacuum is full of fluctuating energies and therefore full of something, and you can extract something from something. Unfortunately, the scientific community at large seems to have looked the other way, have snubbed quantum vacuum energy, and to make things worse, has effectively had little to no reaction at all to Moddel's reputable results. Ignoring his reputable results is not good science. The excuse given is that Moddel's device violates the so-called laws of thermodynamics. But note, these laws are not mathematically defined, are not true laws, and are therefore an approximation at best. Energy must be conserved, yes, but heat is only an approximation. A thermal gradient is not necessarily required to convert energy to work. Today, his labs continue to perfect the technique with the idea of scaling, likely scaling for homes. We could provide you with even more information, thoroughly overwhelming you. Nonetheless, remember, we have placed links to this information below. Okay, it's time to talk about how to build a quantum vacuum interstellar ramjet. In order to build a quantum ramjet, we must first design one, and before this, we must first understand how the device would work. And since we now possess the knowledge, the stage is set. So let's build one. Practically speaking, as is so often the case, in spite of many calculations and successful experimentation, the answer is simple on paper and on the blackboard, while it's much more difficult in practice. Nonetheless, we can start the construction process by thinking in terms of nanoscale electromagnetic resonators. This is but one of many methods. The trick is, we need a resonator that operates on the scale of individual protons, which are as small as the electron shells that make matter feel solid, as a tennis ball is to a sports stadium. Not only that, this resonator must also operate on time scales just as small, at frequencies extending into the ultraviolet spectrum to X-rays, even to gamma rays. So, as you can see, creating such a resonator, while it's possible, will be extremely difficult, often One compares extracting energy from the vacuum to extracting heat from the ocean. It's a fair comparison, but as proven, it is not impossible. It is not impossible. You should note that Professor Moddel's device could serve as a source of energy for all of Earth and elsewhere. For the ultimate propulsion, we need machines that operate on ever smaller scales, at much higher power levels, and are capable of emitting coherent light very efficiently. Prior to Froning and Barrett's papers, they and others have already pulled up their sleeves and got to work, having performed several successful experiments which have long since confirmed the majority of their work. The results can be found in their papers. Remember, links provided below. Whilst the quantum ramjet can be built even with modern technologies, if we want to travel faster than light, there is no other method for extracting the right kind of energy than that of a singularity reactor. More specifically, a singularity reactor of some kind is the only practical way of extracting the amounts of energy needed from the quantum vacuum, and to do so quickly enough for not only the quantum ramjet, but other applications, such as faster than light travel via a warp bubble or field. In a recent paper entitled Penrose Process for Charged Black Hole in a Uniform Magnetic Field, the authors describe a so-called electromagnetic Penrose process, which among other things, interestingly, it also produces a ring of negative energy around a suitably arranged black hole. Isn't that interesting? Note, this might be the last piece of the puzzle to explain those awesome relativistic jets screaming out of more than a few black holes both near and far. We'll cover singularity power in more detail in a future video, but for now, this will have to do. In summary, the quantum ramjet functions by means of extracting energy directly from the quantum vacuum, and it does so by means of a quantum oscillator, hence why the engine is referred to as a quantum drive. Because its exhaust velocity is the speed of light, as high-energy gamma rays, this means it is able to push the starship up to the speed of light. For the first time in our history, we not only have a breakthrough in energy production, but we also now possess the means by which we can begin to ponder true interstellar travel. And with that, I thank you for watching our video. Until next time, keep wandering about space.